Hey everyone, ready to get our hands dirty with the lean startup?
Absolutely. It's a classic for a reason.
We're calling this one a deep dive because, well, that's exactly what it is.
We're gonna really get into the nitty-gritty of Eric Ries's ideas.
Figure out what makes this book tick, why it's resonated with so many people.
And most importantly, what you, the listener, can actually take away from it.
So, to kick things off, what is the lean startup all about?
Well, it's about, at its core, navigating uncertainty.
Uncertainty, something all of us experience every single day.
Yeah, but especially if you're, building a business, trying something new.
Right, because you don't have those established playbooks to follow.
Exactly. You're in uncharted territory. And that's where Ries comes in.
He provides a framework, a methodology for navigating that uncharted territory.
And it all starts with, redefining what a startup actually is.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does Ries define a startup?
He says it's a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Extreme uncertainty. I like that phrasing.
It really gets to the heart of what it means to be a startup.
So it's not just about being a small company or working in a specific industry.
No, it's about that inherent uncertainty.
The not knowing, the experimentation, the constant learning.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that this applies to any size organization.
Really? So even a giant corporation launching a new product could be considered a startup.
Absolutely. If they're venturing into something truly new with lots of unknowns, then yeah, they're essentially operating like a startup.
That's fascinating. So it's not about size, it's about mindset.
It is. It really is.
Okay, so we've established what a startup is in Ries' view. Where do we go from there?
Well, he lays out 5 core principles that form the foundation of the lean startup methodology.
5 principles. Okay, I'm ready to take notes. Hit me with number 1.
All right, principle number 1. Entrepreneurs are everywhere.
Not just in Silicon Valley, right?
Right. They're not just those, stereotypical tech geniuses.
They're in every company, every industry, every level.
Exactly. And this is so important because it democratizes the whole concept of entrepreneurship.
It makes it feel much more attainable, much more relatable.
Exactly. It's not some exclusive club. Anyone can be an entrepreneur.
Okay, I'm loving this already. What's principle number 2?
Principle number 2 is that entrepreneurship is management.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about having a great idea.
No, it's about building a system around that idea.
A system that can handle the inherent uncertainty of a startup.
Yeah, and that requires a different kind of management approach.
So how is this lean startup approach to management different?
Well, traditional management often relies on, those rigid plans, hierarchies.
Right, the top-down approach.
Yeah, and that just doesn't work in a startup environment.
Because you need to be so much more flexible, so much more responsive.
Exactly. You need to be able to pivot, to experiment, to learn on the fly.
Makes sense. So what's principle number 3?
Principle number 3 is all about validated learning.
Validated learning.
It's about making sure you're building something people actually want.
As opposed to just building something you think they want.
Exactly. And the best way to do that is to constantly test your assumptions.
To get real feedback from your customers.
To gather data, to measure your progress, and to make adjustments based on what you learn.
So it's a very data-driven approach.
It is. Very much so.
Okay, what's principle number 4?
Principle number 4 brings all of this together. It's the build, measure, learn feedback loop.
Build, measure, learn. Okay, I'm intrigued. What does that look like in practice?
Well, you start by building a minimum viable product, or MVP.
An MVP, that's that simplest version of your product, right?
Right, the one that lets you test your hypotheses quickly.
So you're not trying to build the perfect product right out of the gate.
No, you're trying to learn as quickly as possible.
You're gathering data, figuring out what works, what doesn't.
And then you use that data to inform your next iteration.
So it's a constant cycle of building, measuring, and learning.
Exactly. It's the heart of the lean startup methodology.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these principles are all interconnected.
They really are. It's a beautiful system.
So we've got validated learning, the build, measure, learn loop.
And underpinning all of this is principle number 5, innovation accounting.
Innovation accounting. What's that all about?
It's about choosing the right metrics to track your progress.
Because not all metrics are created equal.
Right. We need to move away from those, vanity metrics.
The ones that make us feel good but don't actually tell us if our business is on the right track.
Exactly. Instead, we need to focus on actionable metrics.
Metrics that are directly related to our learning goals.
And that give us clear insights into what to do next.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
but we'll definitely have to dive deeper into innovation accounting later.
We definitely will, because it's crucial to the whole lean startup approach.
Now, before we move on, I wanted to touch on something we mentioned earlier, minimum viable products.
Oh yeah, MVPs, they're so important.
They seem crucial to this whole idea of validated learning and the build, measure, learn loop.
Absolutely. They're the key to testing your assumptions quickly and cheaply.
Can you give us some examples of successful MVPs?
Sure. Think of companies like Zappos, Dropbox, and Food on the Table.
Zappos, the online shoe retailer.
Yeah, they started by simply taking pictures of shoes from local stores.
Really? That's how they tested the market.
They wanted to see if there was even demand for buying shoes online.
Brilliant. Talk about starting lean.
Right. And then there's Dropbox. They created a simple explainer video.
Didn't that video go viral?
It did, and it helped them validate their idea before building the actual product.
Wow, so they were able to test their core value proposition without spending a ton of money on development.
Exactly. And that's the power of a well-designed MVP.
It's not about launching a half-baked product.
No, it's about validating your key assumptions as quickly as possible.
And then using that learning to build something truly valuable.
Right. It's about making sure you're building the right thing.
I love that. It's such a smart approach to product development.
It really is. And it's not just for startups either.
Really. You think these principles can be applied to any organization?
Absolutely. The core principles of the lean startup are all about embracing uncertainty, experimenting, learning from feedback, and adapting quickly.
Those are valuable skills no matter what you do.
Exactly. And we see companies like Intuit and Toyota applying these principles.
Intuit, the company behind TurboTax and QuickBooks.
Yeah, they've fully embraced the idea of working in small batches, getting constant feedback, and empowering employees to innovate.
So they're taking a page from the startup playbook.
They are, and it's working really well for them.
It's amazing to see these principles being applied in such a large, established organization.
And then there's Toyota with their famous and on Corda system.
You mean where any worker can stop the entire production line if they spot a defect?
That's it. It might seem counterintuitive, but it actually leads to higher quality and efficiency in the long run.
Because they're addressing problems immediately, rather than letting them pile up.
Exactly. And it creates a culture of shared responsibility and continuous improvement.
I love that. So even if you're not building the next unicorn startup, these lean startup principles can be incredibly valuable.
They really can. And we'll dive deeper into how to apply them in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part. We've talked about what a startup is, the 5 core principles of the lean startup methodology, the importance of MVPs, and even how these principles are being applied in larger organizations.
It's been quite the journey.
And we're just getting started. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll unpack even more of these fascinating concepts.
I can't wait.
See you there.
See ya. Welcome back.
Glad to be back. I feel like we just scratched the surface in part 1.
I know, right? There's just so much to unpack with the lean startup.
Okay, so where do we pick up? We were talking about innovation accounting, I think.
Yeah, let's dive deeper into that. Because it's kind of a big deal in the lean startup world.
I'm ready to get into the numbers.
It's not just about the numbers, though. It's more about, using the right numbers to make smarter decisions.
Okay, I'm listening. So why is innovation accounting so important?
Well, traditional business metrics, they don't always tell the whole story for startups.
Especially in those early stages, right? When you're still figuring things out.
Exactly. Traditional metrics tend to focus on, revenue, profit, market share.
Which are obviously important for established businesses.
Right. But for startups, those numbers can be misleading.
Misleading? How so?
Well, they might look good on paper, but they could be masking underlying issues.
Like a lack of customer engagement or a flawed growth model.
Exactly. And that's where innovation accounting comes in. It helps us look beyond those surface-level metrics and really understand if we're making progress.
So instead of just tracking how much money we're making, we're tracking how much we're learning.
Yeah, it's about measuring our learning and using that data to make better decisions.
I like that. So how do we actually implement innovation accounting?
Ries breaks it down into 3 main steps. The first step is establishing a baseline. You need to measure where you are right now, even if the numbers aren't pretty.
Kind of like taking a before picture before starting a new workout plan.
Exactly. The second step is tuning the engine. This is where you start making small, incremental improvements to your product and marketing based on what you're learning.
So we're constantly tweaking and optimizing, trying to move the needle in the right direction.
Precisely. And the third step is deciding whether to pivot or persevere. This is where you take a step back, analyze your progress, and decide if you're on the right track.
Or if you need to make a significant change.
Yeah, this is where things can get tough. It's not always easy to let go of an idea, even if the data is telling you it's not working.
That's where that data-driven mindset really comes in handy.
It does. It helps you take the emotion out of the equation and make more objective decisions.
So how do we choose the right metrics to track?
Ries outlines 3 key characteristics of good metrics: actionable, accessible, and auditable.
I remember those 3 A's. Let's break those down for our listeners.
Sure, actionable metrics, they're the ones that actually tell you what to do. They're not just numbers for the sake of numbers.
They give you clear insights into what to change or improve.
Exactly. Then there are accessible metrics.
Accessible meaning everyone on the team can understand them.
Yeah, no more jargon-filled reports that only the data scientists can decipher.
And finally, auditable metrics. These are the ones that are, well, trustworthy.
Right. The data needs to be reliable and transparent so that everyone has confidence in it.
Makes sense. So it's all about choosing metrics that are meaningful, easy to understand, and reliable.
And remember, the specific metrics you track will depend on your business and your goals.
Right, there's no one-size-fits-all solution here.
It's about finding the metrics that are most relevant to your business.
Okay, so we've got these metrics, we're tracking our progress, we're learning, but how do we actually grow the business?
Great question. That's where Ries introduces the concept of engines of growth.
Engines of growth.
These are the mechanisms that drive sustainable growth for startups. He identifies 3 main types.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are they?
The first is the sticky engine. This is all about attracting customers and keeping them engaged for the long term.
So products with high retention rates, low churn rates, things like that.
Exactly. Think of companies like Netflix or Spotify. They're designed to keep users coming back for more.
They hook you and keep you coming back. What's the second type of engine?
The second is the viral engine.
Viral, like spreading through word of mouth.
Exactly. Think of social media platforms like Facebook or Instagram. They grow organically through social sharing.
Because people love them so much, they tell their friends. It's like a chain reaction.
Precisely. And the key metric for a viral engine is the viral coefficient.
Which basically measures how many new users each existing user brings in.
You got it. The higher the viral coefficient, the faster the growth.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the third type of engine?
The third is the paid engine.
Paid, as in advertising and marketing.
Yep. This is the classic model for many businesses.
But it can be tricky for startups, right? Because they often have limited resources.
It can be. You need to be very strategic with your spending. The key metric here is the cost per acquisition, or CPA.
So you need to make sure you're not spending more to acquire a customer than that customer will ultimately bring in.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act. But when done right, paid acquisition can be a very effective engine of growth.
Okay, so we've got sticky, viral, and paid engines. It seems like most startups would want all 3, right?
You might think so, but Ries actually recommends focusing on just one engine at a time.
Really? Why is that?
Because each engine requires a different set of skills and resources. Trying to do all 3 at once can spread you too thin.
So it's about choosing the right engine for your business and then really mastering it.
Exactly. Focus your energy where it will have the biggest impact.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered a lot of ground with innovation accounting and engines of growth.
We have, but we're not done yet. There's still one more crucial piece of the puzzle.
Oh, and what's that?
The people.
The people.
Yeah, all of this, the metrics, the processes, it all comes down to the people building the business.
Because even with the best framework in the world, you need a talented and dedicated team to execute it.
Exactly. And that's where we move from steer, the second part of the book, to accelerate.
Accelerate.
Yeah, this is where Ries focuses on building an adaptive organization, one that can thrive in the face of constant change.
So we're taking all of these lean startup principles and applying them to the company itself.
Precisely. And that's where we'll pick things up in part 3 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here, back for more lean startup goodness.
It's been a wild ride so far, right? Validated learning, engines of growth, innovation accounting.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
But now it's time to talk about the most important element of any startup.
The product. The market.
The people.
Yes, the people. Can't forget about them.
Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, it's the people who build and execute those ideas.
And who navigate all the, well, the inevitable challenges of startup life.
Because let's be honest, startups can be messy, chaotic, unpredictable.
Definitely not for the faint of heart.
So in this final part of the book, Ries focuses on building what he calls an adaptive organization.
An organization that can, roll with the punches, adapt to change quickly.
Right, because in the startup world, the only constant is change.
Exactly. And that requires a different kind of organizational structure, a different kind of culture.
So how do we build this adaptive organization? What are the key ingredients?
Well, Rees draws a lot of inspiration from lean manufacturing principles, particularly the Toyota production system,
Toyota.
the car company, the one and only. They've been doing this lean thing for decades, and they're pretty good at it.
So what can we learn from Toyota?
A lot. They emphasize the importance of working in small batches, getting constant feedback, and empowering employees at all levels to identify and solve problems.
That sounds familiar. Kind of like what we were talking about with the build, measure, learn loop in innovation accounting.
It's all connected. The lean startup is really about creating a culture of continuous learning and improvement, whether you're building a product, a team, or an entire organization.
A culture where everyone is empowered to experiment, to learn, to adapt.
Exactly. And one of the key tools Rees highlights for achieving this is the 5 whys technique.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Isn't that where you just keep asking why until you get to the root cause of a problem?
That's the one. It's deceptively simple, but it's incredibly powerful.
Why is that?
Well, it's so easy to get caught up in addressing the symptoms of a problem without ever really understanding the underlying cause.
Right, like putting a bandage on a wound without figuring out what caused the injury in the first place.
Exactly. The 5 whys forces you to dig deeper, to peel back the layers and uncover the why behind a problem.
Which leads to more effective and sustainable solutions.
Precisely. And Rees shares some great examples of how Toyota has used the 5 whys to solve all sorts of problems, from manufacturing defects to customer service issues.
So it's not just for fixing machines on a production line.
No, not at all. It can be applied to any problem, big or small, in any industry.
I'm starting to see how powerful this technique can be. It's all about asking the right questions and not being afraid to dig deeper.
Exactly. And it's about creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to ask those questions.
A culture where curiosity and critical thinking are valued.
I like that. Curiosity and critical thinking, those are essential ingredients for any adaptive organization.
So we've got the 5 whys, we're working in small batches, we're getting constant feedback. What else is important for building this adaptive organization?
Rees also talks about the importance of continuous deployment.
Didn't we talk about that earlier? I thought that was mainly a software development thing.
It is often associated with software, but Rees argues that the principles of continuous deployment can be applied to any product or process.
Okay, so what does continuous deployment look like outside of software?
Well, it's about releasing small, incremental updates frequently, rather than waiting for those big monolithic launches.
So it's like, instead of launching a brand new car model every few years, you're constantly making small improvements to the existing models.
Exactly. And it's about getting those changes into the hands of customers as quickly as possible to gather feedback and iterate.
It's that build, measure, learn loop in action again.
It is. And it
Yeah.
requires a shift in mindset, moving away from that fear of failure that can paralyze larger organizations.
Right, because in a traditional organization, there's often this pressure to get everything perfect before releasing it to the world.
Yeah, but in the startup world, that kind of perfectionism can be deadly. You need to be willing to experiment, to fail fast, to learn from your mistakes.
To adapt quickly.
Exactly. The ability to adapt is crucial for survival in the ever-changing startup landscape.
So how do you foster this kind of culture, this willingness to experiment and adapt within a large organization? It seems like it would be easy for those innovative ideas to get bogged down in bureaucracy.
That's a great point. And Rees acknowledges that challenge. He talks about the importance of creating innovation sandboxes within larger organizations.
Innovation sandboxes, what are those?
They're basically safe spaces for teams to experiment and test their ideas without being bogged down by the red tape of the larger organization.
So kind of like mini startups within the company.
Exactly. Give those teams the resources, the autonomy, and a personal stake in the outcome, and they can really thrive.
It's like giving them the freedom and flexibility to operate like a startup while still having the support of a larger organization.
Right. And as those experiments prove successful, they can gradually be integrated back into the larger organization, spreading that lean startup culture throughout the company.
I like that. It's a win-win for everyone involved.
It is. And as Rezzers points out, this ability to innovate and adapt is becoming increasingly important in today's rapidly changing world.
Because the pace of change is only accelerating, and those who can't keep up will be left behind.
It's true. We're living in an age of unprecedented technological advancement, but our ability to create often outpaces our ability to know what to build.
We can build almost anything these days, but the real challenge is figuring out what's actually worth building.
Exactly. And that's where the lean startup mindset comes in. It's about building the things that customers actually want and need.
And it's about building those things in a way that's sustainable, adaptable, and customer-centric.
Well said. It's about embracing uncertainty, experimentation, and continuous learning.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the lean startup, let's leave our listeners with a final thought.
How can you apply these principles in your own work, your own projects, your own life?
Because these ideas are incredibly powerful, and they have the potential to transform not just the way we work, but the way we live.
So go forth, experiment, learn, adapt, and build something amazing.
That's it for our deep dive into the lean startup. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Until next time, happy learning.